That's the part that's fun about industry only in this podcast is that like there are all these real relationships between all these people. So you're not just telling one story, you're telling a collective story. So let's keep doing it.
Let's keep doing it.
Welcome to Industry Only at the Cheese Store, where we're going to find a new way to trigger Dom today.
It shouldn't be that hard.
What do we got?
Yeah, Dom, we just have a headline we wanted to read you to try to get your raw,
Just
quick take on this,
Don't
okay?
think about it. Just
don't think about it.
Just don't think, just react.
Yeah.
Like you usually do.
Okay, so headline, Los Angeles has the best pizza in the country, period.
Are you going to say anything? This is an hour of him laughing.
No. Okay. Honestly, first and foremost, I will say that the pizza game in LA has become unbelievably fantastic. I truly believe that. There are people there's chefs in this city that are making some of the best pizza that I've tasted. And by the way, fresh off of a trip from New York last week, I will say that LA's pizza game has become something that I am super proud of, where in the past it would be like, oh my God, like how could you even eat this slice? But now it's like, wow, like what's next? Who's coming to the city? What's new? What's different? Right? Like, I mean, like I feel like the game here is strong, really strong. And by the way, every New Yorker that comes to LA shits on the city, they'll shit on the food, and you'll see them back here again over and over again.
All right, well, we've talked about Daniele at Pizzana before, but who else do you like, Dom?
So the pizza I love in LA is for sure, I mean, Pizzeria Se. Pizzeria Se to me, it's like a Tokyo style pizza, but also he draws from like a lot of Italian influence and things like that. So like, and his combinations of toppings and ingredients is probably like very, I mean, like one of my favorite pizzas that he does is like this potato pie.
Right.
With like this, I want to say it's like a scallion cream that he puts on top that is unbelievable. Like, so I mean, when you have like that kind of, I don't know, the thought process that goes behind being that creative for pizza. And also too, like there's like people making great slices in the city. Apollonia does this great square slice. Mm-hmm. I love the Prince Street Diavola with the pepperoni. Put that on your like reheat that in your oven when it comes delivery. It's so, I mean, there's so many great pizza places that it's kind of beyond giving New York a run for its money. I think like LA
so
has
Dom's not triggered at all. Dom like agrees.
Yeah, sounds like it.
Well, no, and you know what? Like I have to say, I would have been triggered maybe 5 or 10 years ago, but now knowing and seeing what the city's doing, pizza and Petromales. How about Petromale?
Yeah.
I love him. He's great.
But the reality is, it's like, 5 years ago we were having this people started having this conversation. I got asked to write about something about this, and I was like, look, is LA the best pizza city in the country? I mean, that's the wrong question. The correct question is just does the pizza here like feel more alive and different than it's ever been before, right?
Oh, how about how the game has grown?
Yeah.
The LA pizza game has grown. And also, too, you can save all the conversations about we bring the water in from New York and all that bullshit. That's complete bullshit as far as I'm concerned. If you are bringing water from New York, water weighs a lot. It's expensive to ship things across the country. There's no way you're bringing your water from New York. And by the way, it doesn't matter if you have good flour.
There are filtration systems that can simulate some of the water from New York now,
Hey, look, my little knowledge of making pizza, I don't even think that is something that would be even required. When you have all these greats making incredible pies and like dough.
And you have these newcomers too, right? Like literally Fiorelli Pizza. Like, look, Michael is very experienced. He's cooked at a lot of places.
I had to give him a compliment. But I love him. I do love him.
Remember, like, he showed up at one of the industry-only parties that Chow Now started cooking out of the Gosney. At the last party that you were at, like, who was there? Let's see. Naughty Pie Nature, Boy Blue, Little Dynamite, Daniel Holzman, who, in comparison to these people, would be considered an OG, but in reality, like, hasn't been making pizza in LA that long. He was the guy at the meatball shop. So a lot of these people are like, in terms of the pizza game, they're new to the pizza game. I'm just naming people, self-servingly that like have come to my parties. We're not talking about Pizzana. We're not talking about Ronan. We're not talking about Say.
I'm going to interrupt for 2 seconds. Can you please shed a little bit of light about your parties and what Industry Only is, and how the hell did you start such an institutional event where people around the country follow you around? How'd you do that?
I mean, the parties are really just nights where a bunch of chefs, restaurant operators, bartenders, people who work in hospitality, they're almost on the clock all the time, just gather together, mainly for a potluck, where they just cook, make drinks, and they do this all for each other.
But they're bringing in like full kitchens. They're wheeling in pizza ovens. I mean, this is more than just like a potluck. Because when I think potluck, I think of like prepared foods in a little aluminum tray with a cover on it, and that's not the case. Like these people are coming here, setting up in advance.
Chefs like to flex, right? But it becomes this, like thing that just feeds off of each other. Because this started where we did an after party for an API market that we did at Smorgasburg, and we did this party at the Joint. Now, the thing about Leeway at the Joint, besides the fact that he has a lot of friends that are prominent chefs, is just that, like, Leeway himself is very, very generous, right? So at his parties, he would get a little tipsy, wake up the next morning, and just be like, oh, man, I think I just cut $1,500 worth of Toro at my party. There's a bunch of caviar missing, but it's not missing. I opened it and I gave it to people. And then it's funny, this is pure coincidence, I'm wearing this Brother Sushi shirt because, I like that restaurant a lot. I've known Mark for a while. I think I got this one at his anniversary party. But Mark is somebody who now who has a reputation for showing up at this party late, just with this crazy elaborate chirashi, right? That, you can't even buy it at a restaurant, meaning that, like, this is just something that he made for the party. He made it, I mean, it's crazy. It's like basically he's making chirashi in bulk, right? But it's still like he's got the tweezers and he's assembling like...
Explain what chirashi is so everyone understands.
Chirashi, it's essentially, it's just a box full of cut up raw fish and other over sushi rice, right? And you can make it look very blingy. So Mark was doing that. So I think it sort of started with just a couple people deciding to do this, and then other chefs came once. What happens is, like, you're a chef, you come once, and you see one chef making kebabs outside, and you're like, oh, I didn't realize I could do this. And then the next chef comes the next time, it's like, oh, well, I'm going to bring a whole pig or whatever, and then it just escalates. And at this point, it doesn't make sense in terms of, like, naming people, but, our host properties, right? Meaning, like, the places that have hosted the parties. Forget the chefs that have come by. We've done Moo's Craft Barbecue, we've done Pizza Palace a couple times, we've done Steep, we've done Verse. And what's really kind of interesting about it is, like, we've talked for a while about, like, awards don't matter, lists don't matter, and this isn't me saying it, this is, like, guests saying it, but it does make me proud that, like, whatever, the New York Times put out a top 25 list of the best restaurants in LA, and I think, like, more than a third of them have cooked at our parties, right?
Right.
Probably, like, more than 33, like, more than a third of the restaurants in the LA Times 101. It's actually, I think it's close to half now, have hosted or cooked at our parties, or in some cases, like, have DJ'd our parties. It's pretty wild and people just like doing this for each other. So there's no agenda beyond that. We have different sponsors, like reservations company, this company called In Kind that funds restaurants, companies that...
Big Noise?
Big Noise Beer, which is a great beer, that has partnered with a lot of restaurants through industry only, but also just on its own merits. So obviously, a lot of people come to these things because sponsors come because they want deal flow, but it's relaxing where there's nobody, like, pitching. These parties, like, at first didn't even have a real invite list, but they got tighter because the first couple of parties we had, there were people like, I've got some robot delivery startup, and I bring my biz dev person, and they're coming to this party to talk to people about, like, the delivery radius of their fucking robot. And we're like, no, it can't be like this. Number one, if you're at a conference, you'd have to pay a lot of money for this access too. Our parties are not about that. They're not about direct pitches. But what I will say is that people have definitely found their funding, their online ordering platform, their lawyers, their architects, most of their tech stack, their suppliers, the people who sell them shitty cheese in Beverly Hills,
So, well, actually, let me take a step back for 1 second. So, like, how did you actually come about to start Industry Only? Like, what was like the driving force behind that?
It was really like during the pandemic. My friend Crystal Kozer and I were on Clubhouse, which was an audio only app, just because everybody was trapped and they were bored, and because everybody was home all the time, we got a lot of A-list chef guests, right? And then we decided to do a
Andy,
fundraiser.
were you doing a podcast? Were you cheating on me? Were you doing a podcast behind my back?
It wasn't even a podcast. So it was just a live recording, right?
Okay. All right. Fair
And
enough.
I mean, and there's somewhere, they're probably somewhere on the cloud somewhere. I don't even know. I haven't listened to it in a while. But then with our friend Yusai, some prominent, great photographer, and also activist during, the whole Stop API Hate movement, right? We did an online fundraiser, and because it was Clubhouse at the time, the pandemic at the time, and people readily available, all these people that will never return my calls now just
Yeah,
hopped,
right.
and they just all went, talked on Clubhouse for 5 minutes, and I think we raised more than $50,000.
Wow.
And then got the attention of the mayor's office, did brick and mortar stuff, and to make a long story short, we did a, IRL in real life smorgasbord fundraiser. Leeway from the Joint wanted to have an after party. The after party went really well, and suddenly we decided, we should throw a party every few months for our friends. And it just escalated. As you know, at the last Chow Now one, there are more than 300 people there. It seemed like a pizza festival. So, look, these things are a blur for me. I don't even really love talking about it. I like hearing experiences. So, what do you like about these parties? What's made you, because you've come and then you've come back, and that says something.
So it's kind of interesting. So the first one I ever went to was at PG Palace, whenever
Yeah.
that was. I don't know. Was that like a year ago or whatever? I don't
No,
know.
that was
2
like
years ago.
No. I think that's maybe 6-8 months ago, but it's all blurred for me. But the thing about
Right.
PJ
So-
Palace, by the way, that's some Indian, Italian, American sports bar that makes really good pizza. So LA is having a cool pizza moment.
It is, and not just Italian style, right? So,
Yeah.
So basically, when I first went there, I was like, all right, yeah, like I'm definitely gonna come because you and I had we had an interview together, which is how we met, and I was like, you know what, like yeah, like I would love to go check it out, and also too, it's it's one of those things, and we've spoken about this before on previous casts, but like, you don't really get an opportunity to socialize outside of your work. And for me to socialize amongst my peers and customers and, vendors and all that, like I thought it was a great opportunity to kind of get out there. So I went and I immediately met, of course, customers that I've known forever, chefs that I've sold to. And then I started meeting new people. And for me, it wasn't just a matter of like meeting new people. It was more like these people are quality. Like somebody has a story to tell. Somebody has a new business they're launching. Somebody's working with another restaurant. Like there's so many key people
Right,
there.
Michelin starred chefs
And-
next to somebody who's never opened a restaurant, and they're just having a real conversation about what their challenges
Right,
are, and it's
right.
great.
So getting back to it, like just literally the quality of people that were there, and also too, it wasn't like someone. Everyone's always trying to sell you something. It wasn't like people were trying to sell me something. It was more like, hey, like,
Dom was walking around trying to get people to buy Wonderdonk cheese, so let's be real about
and
it.
it worked.
Yeah.
We sold out. No, but like, thinking about it, just seeing, the level of chef that you had there, the level of talent, the level of a small little boutique business trying to get off the ground, launching at industry only, like that's a big deal. I do have a question though. How did you come up with industry only, and why was that? Like, how did you land on that name?
Because it was just what it was. We wanted a place where, chefs could feel free to just talk their shit, right? Free to flex, free to vent, free to complain, free to talk about how hard the city is, right? Free to talk about how unfair they believe the media can be, right? Free to talk about all these things without worrying that there's somebody there recording them, trying to get them, trying to figure out some scoop, right? So that was the thing. And like, look, it's grown over the times. Like we do some bigger parties and we do allow like select media. But for the smaller ones, no, we keep it tight, because what's been happening is that a lot of chefs have been finding collaborations and partnerships through this, and we want to keep that stuff on the DL until they're ready to announce it, right? But what's cool and what makes me feel great is the level of trust, because people will come here and they're known for cooking one thing, and they'll just cook something completely different because they're like, we're going to R&D this, right? And I had a very, very proud moment where, to me, like the biggest flex is not anything that I've done, but like we have convinced people that this is a place to do it. So we had months before Fiorelli Pizza and months before Stella West Hollywood opened, they were both just at Chow Now trying something out, right? Mm-hmm. Fiorelli Pizza was next to Amiga Amore, which a few months after that got nominated and became a James Beard semifinalist. And like, look, we've talked some shit about how James Beard is performative and it like means certain things and doesn't mean certain things. But on one level, like it is sort of the pinnacle, right? Of like, you're trying to be a chef. This is a major recognition. So again, I will again go on record as saying that like probably some of these people should be getting their nominations when they're fully ready and have like fully formed restaurants. But at the same time, they're great chefs. They deserve to be in the spotlight. And the fact that we're the thing that they choose to go to, like they want to come hang out with us during their rare downtime. I mean, that's the part where like, well, I feel kind of honored to get to do this in the first place, right?
It's almost so. I mean, like it's kind of interesting too, Andy, because like obviously you have a big voice in our industry and things like that. But like, do you feel some kind of like responsibility to like bring people together? Do you feel like some type of like I don't know. It's almost like you're dedicating yourself to the craft of what we do and how we do it. Like, what does that mean to you? Like, what does it mean to you to bring all these people together?
I mean, it's not responsibility so much, although I do recognize how hard it is in LA, like how ridiculously hard it is, right? And you got to be a little bit insane or, not have too many other options or just be mercilessly focused on doing one specific thing to really want to like have a restaurant in LA, right? And I think it's not so much responsibility, but this idea that like collectively, right? If you're one restaurant trying to like pitch yourself for sponsorship or events, like that's hard. You got to hire your own PR person. But if you're sort of like this collective of people and you can go to brands and all that, or brands start coming to you. So, I mean, one thing that I want to talk about is like, we've talked in the past about how like Michelin and other things don't recognize LA, but what recognizes LA is the rest of the culinary community at large because they look at Instagram. They're like, wow, Moo's Craft Barbecue looks amazing. The pastries at Flowering are so evocative and so beautiful. The way that Leeway cuts fish and the way that he's an evangelist for dry-aged fish and convince all these other chefs is seriously groundbreaking. So a lot of the stuff is you're in the weeds, you're by yourself. Mm-hmm. But collectively, people want the coolness and the deliciousness and the vitalness of what LA food, LA beverage is. And so this is just another one of those coalitions, but our coalition is built around just throwing parties and having a good time and seeing what happens.
What else is going on for industry only? Like, where do you see us? Where's the next event? Is there another event coming up in LA?
We're going to do one in LA and Salazar in the next few weeks. Probably by the time this podcast comes out, it'll be over. But it's Ezra Sochoa, one of the famous like street food pioneers, is coming back. There's going to be, and this is what I like about the food industry, right? People are always hustling, right? We did an event at Humberto Leon and his family's restaurant, Chifa. Humberto started opening ceremony. There was
where is Chifa?
Chifa is in Eagle Rock. It's it's a Chinese
is that
Peruvian
east of
restaurant.
La Cienega? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I've never been.
It's like northeast LA.
Oh, okay.
It's like you're going in two directions you're not used to. Let's be real about this. Right, like north or
yeah,
whatever.
No, I don't know north. I go west and I come back.
So up and right when you look, and you just keep going. But if you go diagonally, it goes faster.
So go ahead.
So, but the point is, it's like it was a winter formal. People got dressed up. It was very, very elaborate. There was a whole cake presentation where there's a cake in a plastic enclosure with bodyguards. But you know what else we had there? We had a Panda, as in Panda Express, Panda Inn catering van because
I saw this
because Panda Inn, the restaurant that predated Panda Express, started by the Chung family, obviously came and cooked at that party, and at the Salazar party, they have multiple restaurants that are not Panda Express within that family that are cooking, and that's what's so cool about it. Andrew and Peggy Chern. I mean, you can look it up. I'm not going to totally blow up their spot, but they've made billions of dollars through Panda Express. But the people in that family within that business still want to keep their old restaurants alive and create new concepts because it's just this thing where you just want to keep creating. And that to me is super inspiring because if you think about the guests that we've had or just the people that come into the cheese store, right? A lot of them have been, running empires, whatever, cooking for Wolfgang Puck for their entire adult lives and then some. And they're still driven by okay, what's next? What's new, right? And I think the cool thing is it's like being surrounded around by that much creative juice just makes other chefs and makes people like me and you, I think, want to keep going. So it's
pretty amazing. I mean, when you think about it, to bring all of these unbelievably talented chefs and things like that together, and to do this sort of event. And you do it. I mean, you do it in New York, you do it in Vegas, you do it all like.
Yeah, we're gonna do it in Miami.
Yeah, I mean that to me is I mean, it's special, and it's not even, you know, look, we've all been through a million of these food shows and events and all that stuff, but like the actual level of talent that you attract is really, really special.
Right,
Which
because
is why,
we don't want anything from them. I don't
Yeah.
care who comes. We're not.
Yeah.
We're not selling tickets.
just
to
make
this,
sure my name's always on the list.
We're
Can
not
I ask
selling
that or
tickets
no?
to these parties, right?
Right.
There's no way to really exploit these people. If they go and they find a deal through it, and it benefits them, great. If they go and find a deal and it ends up hurting them, I'm sorry, but we didn't encourage. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like there's no real selling. A lot of that can come after the fact. It's sort of like I wrote this about like the poker games that I used to play in, right? Where like the biggest mistake that people would make, like when they're playing in a high stakes poker game, is that they'd be like, "Oh, I'm around with all these amazing people. This is my opportunity," right? And I'm like, "Yo,
To go all in when you have no hand?
well, yeah, there's that." But this is the absolute worst moment that I can imagine, to ask somebody if you can be their real estate broker, or to read your screenplay, or to try out my app, because these people are people who get pitched all day long,
Right.
all night long, and this is your relaxation
their
process.
relaxation,
So
exactly.
if you make an actual real bond with somebody, and you're that level of hustler, yeah, ask them to lunch, ask them to dinner, talk to them about it then, but don't do that shit at the poker game,
Right.
and don't do that at the party, right? Like if you've got some great like new seed oil or seed oil that you want to sell to places, you know what you do? Don't try to basically explain to them why buying a pallet of it is more efficient than whatever they buy now. Just be like, hey, here's some seed oil. I see that you're making burgers and you're frying them in tallow. Do you want to try frying something in this just to see if you like it? If you say it like that, probably the chef isn't going to tell you to go fuck yourself. Well, for the most part, they're not, you know?
Right.
And so I think that like it's an opportunity where people can also realize that like the soft selling, the relationship building, all that, it leads to sort of longer term things. And that's what I love about, you know, some of the brands that work with us, where their ask is just to be at the party. And then the ones that are like, oh, I need to build some crazy activation, it has to look like this. And it's like, no, we don't care
We don't do
enough.
that. Right.
There's not enough money that you can pay us. We all have actual jobs, right? There's nobody that's doing this as a primary gig, although people are starting to think that it's my primary gig. But in reality, you know, you're talking about a thing. There's a weird thing, right, when you do events, right? You're asking for title sponsors, right? And I work on things like this all the time. You're asking for 50, 100, 150, right? Once you start asking for that level, you start losing some of your identity, and you start losing your freedom. But you know what? You get money for it, and that's great, right? The thing for industry only is that because this is not a primary source of income for anybody involved, you get to keep your identity, and guess what? You don't ask for those crazy amounts, and when somebody only gives you a few $1,000s, they know that they don't have the right to tell you what kind of event it is,
Right.
and they're not going to come here, and they're not going to annoy the chefs. But at that point, then the chefs are like, well, your truffles are good. Why don't I use these? I like your caviar. Why don't I use this? So I feel like it's just this easier way too, where a lot of people come and they're like, hey, can we sponsor your parties? Do you have a deck? You know, do you want to see ours? And I'm like, don't really have a deck. Here's a 3-paragraph email that I send to people describing it. I don't really need to read about what your other 27 liquor brands are. We like this one. Why don't you just give us that one? You know, so.
Well, because you're not leading with the like monetarily first, right? You're leading with just quality and people that
Yeah.
you know in relationships, and I think that's what
Right,
industry
and
really is.
I still am very business minded. Like these things, I'm never going to do these things of like they lose me money or they lose restaurants money.
Sure.
Right? There needs to be some benefit, and certainly, like, you know, as a secondary or like tertiary thing that I do, like it all adds up, and I'm happy that this allows me, like in this weird media landscape, in this food landscape, to, you know, like carve out a future, right, that like actually makes sense and is viable and can grow. So yeah, eventually this could turn into something else, right? Yeah, it could be some agency, could be whatever, but that's going to be a separate business. I always want the LA parties to be the LA parties and what they are.
And they're amazing. That's exactly what they're.
No, I
They're
mean, thank you
incredible.
for that.
They're incredible, and this is someone coming as a guest who never been to one, you know, what, a year ago, whatever it was, and just being like, holy fuck, like this is the place to be, no doubt about it.
So why did you want to come to Vegas to be with us? Because it seems crazy, right? Because it's like, look, I did get, some chefs booked by various hotels and all that, various casinos here and there, but a lot of people are just coming on faith because they think it's going to be a good time, and you're one of them. It's like, yeah, we're getting you a pop-up, but you had already booked your flight before that, right?
Yeah, no. First of all, I believe in everything that you do, and I believe in how you do it. It's one thing to do World's 50 Best and all this, but like to actually
Right, and to be clear, we're not officially part of World's 50 Best.
Sure.
We are there on the same week that's happening, but that's the actual industry-only vibe, right? Where you just go do your own thing.
Yeah, and once I started learning about the people that you like, Leeway, and the people that you were working with, I'm like, oh my god, like this is really awesome. And also too, I feel that going down there, being present, doing a little look, I mean, the cheese store is expanding, right? So like for me to go in and to do a pop up, to understand the market, to see what's going on, like that to me is like pretty important. And you kind of already did your due diligence, and I believe in what you're doing and how you're doing it.
So,
and to kind of,
so here's the thing.
parlay
Like,
on that
this episode might end up being terrible because this is just like us talking our shit, and it feels like I've now been bragging for the last 20 minutes. But I want to explain like how small this world is, right? So Michael's the chef is the chef at Double Zero.
Mm-hmm.
He was a baker for one of Jeff Fine's restaurants. Jeff Fine's the owner of this restaurant group, and then Jeff essentially opened a restaurant with him. Michael has been trained, mentored, collaborated with like all the pizza legends of Las Vegas, right? But Kevin from Big Noise goes and drops off some beer today, and this is like months before the event. Kevin just was like in Vegas, want to drop off some beer. Michael says he's from Santa Monica. Him and Kevin know a lot of the same people, and then he says the craziest thing: I'm excited about all the pop-ups. Oh, by the way, tell Dom that when I enter pizza competitions, I go and get product from the cheese store of Beverly Hills. So
That's awesome.
And so the full circle of that part is crazy because like now he wants to do the pop-up because he needs negotiating power with you, or he wants you to give you free shit, or he wants free shit from you. But the reality is, the thing that I like about it is that it's organic and it comes from a real place. So I thought, just like in many of these cases, I had to convince Double Zero that the cheese store Beverly Hills is a real entity, and that Dom, despite the fact that he's not a chef and doesn't know how to cook anything at all,
Zero.
was going to come and do a chef takeover, versus people who've like run casino restaurants for Michael Mina. Here's a guy who like can't even slice the Pan de Cristal and needs Ben or Hillary to do it. But he was like, well, no, I understand that Dom can't cook for shit, but Dom's got good products, so he should come. So this is what's good about Las Vegas. They have a lot of people who like have worked a lot of places where they're going to make you look good. And then if you want everything to look better, bring Hillary, bring Ben. We'll have a good time.
Consider it done. I can't wait. It's going to be so exciting.
Guys, I know we got to get out of here in a second, but we did have an audience question I wanted to get to from Matt today. And Matt says, it's super clear listening to the podcast that Andy loves food and loves chefs and like eats at a bunch of restaurants. I know that you're a writer. How do you deal with, as a writer, going to a restaurant that everyone's raving about and you just don't get it?
I mean, for the most part in this day and age, nobody's really writing negative reviews. Like Jonathan Gold, even like, in his later years, wasn't writing negative reviews. And really, you tend not to write about them at all. Mm-hmm. And this is something, like, not everybody agrees with this, right? But I have never been a critic. I've mainly written features about it. And I grew up in a very tabloid world. Like, I worked at the New York Post. And I remember Paula Froelich at the New York Post just saying something along the lines of, well, if you don't like somebody or you don't like something, the best thing that you can do is ignore it. So that's the simple answer
Right,
to that
it kind of
question.
goes away, right?
Right?
Yeah.
And everybody else can just like it. And like, look, there are a lot of look, other podcasts have talked about this, other writers have talked about it, where like people with means don't necessarily have the best taste. So look, there are things that are going to thrive, even though you and I think that they're terrible, and the market can just decide. So I think when I actually write about things, I just want to write about things that, for the most part, like I feel like deserve a bigger place in the spotlight. Mm-hmm. Should be elevated. Or if I'm not writing about those places, I'm writing about places that are extremely popular, but I believe that they, for the most part, deserve the recognition. And here's a different take or a different look at how they became that restaurant. So. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think that seems like it just kind of speaks to like what this podcast is, you know? Like you guys are both people that seem to really celebrate chefs and celebrate food and celebrate that community. And like I think that like this whole first season of the podcast has been a lot of that, and I think that that's kind of that's a good way to put it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean there are other podcasts that like shit on things, but it's like there's no need for us to be
I
that
don't-
one.
Yeah, I don't subscribe to that.
So there's this place down the street. They make these really good sandwiches, right?
You should try them. They're delicious.
I do have one more question for you guys. All right, talking about the pizza in LA. LA's a pizza city now. What would LA's version of a pizza rat be?
You say a pizza rat?
Are you familiar with the pizza rat?
Pizza rat?
All right, you're gonna have to explain
I don't
this
even
one.
know what the
to
hell
me.
you're talking
Okay,
about.
yeah, sorry. I thought that would be common knowledge here. The pizza rat was a thing that went super viral on the internet a couple years ago. It was a rat in the subway system in New York carrying a slice of New York pizza
Yeah.
around. What would LA's version, if LA's a pizza city now, would we have a pizza seagull?
If the rat was smart, he'd be taking it from Say.
There we go.
Right, but would there be? No, I actually think that like in LA, the equivalent, like LA is a pizza city, but it's not that level of a pizza city. Like it would be a rat with a taco. Let's be real about
Yeah, probably, mostly.
Taco rat. Okay.
it. Yeah,
Oh, now I get it.
yeah. This is so fun, just explaining memes and shit that's gone viral to Dom.
I love it. I learned a lot today. Well, listen, this was amazing. Guys,
Yeah, I can't believe you talked me into doing this, and like
I
we've
can't
done.
believe we can't believe it. This is.
But what I'm excited about, honestly, is just knowing that, like, I've been in the cheese store, not recording, when Ari from Spago walked in, when Chris Bianco from, obviously, Pizzeria Bianco walked in. Before we recorded today, like, Monty came in, and
Monty popped in.
yeah, and it's just like, there are all these chefs that come in, and we immediately have this rapport where you just start talking smack to them, and they make fun of the fact that like you're good at sourcing stuff and kind of a useless human being. Besides that, that actually seems to be the recurring theme, right?
Yep, totally useless.
But what I like about it
and the
too,
bad cook. Don't forget bad cook.
but what I like about it, well, yeah, that part was understood. But what I also like about it is just that every guest comes in and they find out who the other guests are. And like Heather had a really funny story about Bert, or Bert just like texts her. It's like, hey, I'm making cookies. How much butter do I need? And Heather's like, that's not enough information for me to answer the question. What in the world are you even asking me? And so that's the part that's fun about Industry Only, this podcast, is that like there are all these real relationships between all of these people. So you're not just telling one story, you're telling a collective story. So let's keep doing it.
Let's keep doing it.
Whether you're listening to this on Apple, via Spotify, or any other platform, you'll see all sorts of buttons. You can give us a thumbs up. Give us a thumbs up. Please leave us a review if and when you can. Like, subscribe, pound all the happy buttons.
Leave us some comments. Anything that has a thumbs up,
and send
click
us
it.
a question via our social or via email.
We'd love to answer it live on air.